Alright, we're here for the start of the 1863 turn, the spring of 1863. We've got the hands dealt out here. We'll go and jump in with the Confederates. They have a foreign intervention, which is now useless because the Emancipation Proclamation has been played, plus they don't even come close to meeting the 110 strategic will. Severe storms at sea, which can allow them to cancel a naval movement, which is nice. The USS Monitor, which can't be played, but it's a 2-card. Crittenden Compromise, same way. Dorothea Dix, which, being from North Carolina, she plays a role here. There's a park named after her in Raleigh. It's a 3-pointer. Forward to Richmond. I'm not sure if they can. I don't think they can play this to force the Union to do it. I don't know why they would want to, but I know in the U.S. Civil War by GMT, the other GMT one, it's like a condition on the board. If you roll a certain die, the Union is forced to do something. So operates a little differently, but will be used differently here. Salmon Chase, 2-pointer, reduces strategic will. I'm not sure how useful that is, but overall, decent-sized hand as far as the points go. A lot of 2s, which is better for the Confederates than it is the Union, so that shouldn't provide too much of a logistical problem. For the Union, though, they have a very interesting hand, Brooklyn Naval Yard conversion, so blockade goes back up by 1. The Confederates played a card that reduced it back down to 0, so they're still trying to crank that up, so that'll be played. 7 days, Chattanooga. These operational cards always interest me, so we'll see how we use that. Strategy board, another naval movement. Red River Campaign. This is a card I've never come across before, really. I don't remember it. And this is basically, you have to be in or adjacent to Grand Ecore here in Louisiana, which just simulates the Red River Campaign, which normally would be not good for the Union, but they do have a force down here in Nacogdoches, which can go into Marshall, and then they can use this card as an OC, is what it has to be used for, an operation point, to get into Shreveport, and possibly go all the way down. But if they bust through in Texas, then this actually will play perfectly in. But it gives us an impetus to move forward in Texas. Kentucky Anarchy, which is useless now. Purchasing Agents, which can't play. And then the Kearsarge sinks the Alabama, which is just a 1-point increase, which is would be a 3 with the Fortunes of War switch. So we'll see if that's useful or not. But the major objectives here for the Confederacy is always the same. Hold on. I don't see anything else they can poach. No invasion of the North that I could see would be useful, nor really any opportunity to do so. They're blocked in the East, so they're going to stick around. Whereas for the Union, the absolute minimum they can accept this turn is taking Texas and completing the Red River Campaign. What they'd like to do is to eliminate the fort in New Madrid, close off Memphis, and put Jackson under siege, and retake Nashville, and that would be what would be perfect. They could possibly think about trying to cut off Johnston in Chattanooga as well, if Pope can wiggle his way past Forrest, but have to get Texas and the Red River Campaign done, and we'd like to pick off those 3 forts and move towards getting Tennessee captured by the end of next turn. So right off the bat, the Union are going to activate Rosecrans, who is sitting with 2 strength points, I believe. Yeah, 2 in Nacogdoches. They're going to move him down here to this port to pick up 4 more, which will give him his max limit that he can carry of 6. Before the Confederates can reinforce Pemberton in Marshall. And so they'll pick him up and advance on Pemberton, who I believe is on just 1 strength point. Let's find out. 2. Surprise, surprise. So it's going to be 6 against 2, which is 4 against 1, which gives them yet another bonus. So it'll be a +1 for Rosecrans, +2 more, or +3 more for 4-to-1 odds. So it's going to be a +4 total for Rosecrans and a +1 for Pemberton. Alright. We have a 5 and a 2. There we go. Sorry about that. And then we can take it up here. It's going to be a medium battle. 5 and a 2. That 5 is going to be modified to a 9. And the 2 is going to be modified to a 3. So a 9 is 2. 3 is 1. So Rosecrans will take a 1-step loss. And Pemberton will be eliminated. That goes away. Pemberton off till next turn. Sorry again. And this goes down to a 5. And so, of course, I'm playing by the rules this time where they can't just convert the space. They have to be there at the end of the turn. And I want to make sure it's the end of the entire turn, not the end of your movement. Like you have to, like that, if they can't convert that space by stop moving and then it switches over. I think they have to wait until the whole end of the turn. Anyways, regardless, it's not that big of a deal because then they can just advance into Shreveport with that 3-point card, and then they'll have fulfilled the conditions for the Red River campaign and get Texas done on the first 2 turns. So that'll be perfect. But they can still move. So because they were more than double the strength of the defender. So let me look up about the conversion, switching it over, and see what I come up with. Yes. So it happens at the end of the turn, not at the end of each movement. But there was a good example in the rule book of what they did. So this is what we're going to do, the same thing. We still have room, so we're going to drop. We still have movement left. So what do we make sure we do? I think we have a total of, where is the movement thingy on the board? I think there's something that tells you. Maybe it's on the player aid. Yeah, so cores can move 8 spaces. So that's 1, 2, 3, so they've still got room. They're going to drop off a strength point, reduce themselves down to 4. So they'll still have 4-to-1 odds. And they'll still have a +1 in Shreveport. But, it'll be pretty straightforward. 6 and 3, which will go up on the board, and that's going to be 6 modified, will be a 10, so we'll have to make a roll to see if Rosecrans dies, or whatever happens with him, and the defender's roll will be a 1. So, forces here in Shreveport are eliminated. Rosecrans goes down by 1. And then we'll have to roll to see if he takes a casualty. It's on a 1 to 3. But there may be a, I think it's actually, we actually ignore that because of the force ratio. I'll check on that. But anyways, as far as I can tell, they can still keep moving because they have 8 spaces. They have 1, 2, 3, 4. They were larger than double, so they could leave 1 and go 5. Leave 1. 6. They cannot get to Alexandria without naval movement, which they don't have. But they might as well. There's a force in Vicksburg, but I don't think they're going to do anything. So let's do that. Let's drop 1 off here, drop 1 off here, and drop 1 off there. So we'll break all of these down into 1s. I've never done this before, but the rulebook provided a explanation or an example where they did this, and I see where it's useful. I'm going to leave 1 in each, which will definitely get us the Red River campaign completed, and it'll also get Texas for us as well. So that'll be the opening move here. And fairly successful, if you ask me. And the Confederates are now having these weak underbellies, positions being exposed, which is just another layer on top of the problems they were already facing. So let's see how they respond. The Confederates moved Wheeler up from New Orleans into Memphis to give the Army of the Mississippi, you can barely see it right here, cavalry general in case they're attacked by another army. But now the Union are going to play a Red River campaign, which they could have used for the movement they just did, but the worry was that it wouldn't work, that they would have been stalled and then lose the strategic will. So this is kind of a, they missed out on a chance to really double up and use their actions efficiently, but, it is what it is. So it says that they must use this as an operations card. We're sure. At the conclusion of the movement, if a Union SP is not on or adjacent to Granite Corps, which is true, then they lose 5 strategic will, which that I don't have to worry about. And if a Union strength point is in one of them, then a PC marker can immediately be placed to convert the space or spaces. And they are in 2 of the spaces, so those 2 can be converted immediately, which is useful. Because what they'll do now, or after this, possibly they may wait until next turn, if the actions aren't there, is they can pick these guys back up and head into Arkansas. Because if you look at the geography of Louisiana, they cannot get to Alexandria, and they cannot cross anywhere else. They can't get into Vicksburg. So they're stuck in these 3 spaces, and they need 6. Plus, they have to have New Orleans closed off. So the rest of this is going to have to come through an attack on New Orleans. So at this point, they're done with any operations in Louisiana from the north. So they can go up maybe to Little Rock and cut off someone like New Madrid, forces in New Madrid or Memphis way up in the north. But they've exhausted all their options here. So if there is the points for that, if there is a card for that, they may do it. Otherwise, they might just wait till next turn and keep cranking down on the vice. So back over to the Confederates. So the Union played strategy board, which they're going to use now to make an assault on Forts St. Philip and Jackson. They have a +2 on the amphibious assault modifier. They're going to be attacking a coastal fort, which gives them a +2 modifier. So those balance out. You get 1 modifier for amphibious assault, so that modifier will be 0. But the Union will have a +3 for the force ratio, or +2, sorry, for a 3-to-1 ratio. So it'll be a +2 for the Confederates on this assault to open up New Orleans to an attack. Alright. It's going to be a 4-2, which isn't great because that 2 is going to be modified to a 4. And then a 4-4, and it's going to be on a small battle. A 4-4 will be a 1 across the board. And if I remember correctly, if it's the attacker is eliminated, if the defender is eliminated, and there's a fort, and then the attacker cannot advance in. So this will be reduced to a 2. And they'll have to go back from whence they came, and they'll hold on to Fort St. Philip Jackson. I'll double check that, but I'm pretty sure that's correct. And it's unfortunate because I don't know if they have the capability to launch another attack, but if they do, they're definitely going to, because they don't want the Confederates to send in another unit or reinforcement whenever the next turn comes around and seal that back up. So the Confederates did a move, and back to the Union. The Union's going to play this 3 card to put the naval move back in to Fort St. Philip Jackson, but it just so happens that the Confederates have severe storms at sea, which then cancels that move. So that came around at the perfect time to make sure that they do not get a hold of that fort, at least on this turn. It will force them next turn to come back and deal with that again. So unfortunate for the Union, but well timed for the Confederacy. that brings this turn to a close. The spring of 1863. We're going to go ahead and convert these spaces. So Marshall will get a Union marker. Not for long, though. And Monroe will get one as well. And then we'll go in, there aren't any others as far as I can see. So then we'll go ahead and convert this state. 3 of the 3 are controlled. So we can now remove these Union markers. And we can convert Texas back. And then the Confederates will lose 7. And then I guess it's just the Confederates only lose, and the Union don't get the bonus. So they're going to lose 7, which will make sure it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Moves them down to 77, and the Union are on 86. So, not bad. They'll take that for sure. Alright, so with that said and done, we'll wrap up the rest of this turn and move on to the summer of 1863. Here we are, summer 1863, and let's go ahead and get you the cards for the Confederates first. We have detached cavalry, which is interesting. I don't know if it'll get used or not. Indian allies, which gets them another strength point, which could actually be useful to defend Arkansas. Cabinet intrigue, reducing strategic will of the Union by 3. It's not bad. Arkansas, this is especially good for defending these ports. They're going to come under attack. Political crisis can be used. Copperheads, reduces strategic will more, which is A. And then the Hunley, which is another opportunity to shore up some of these ports, like New Orleans or Memphis, maybe even Vicksburg, some of these places that are coming under attack. For the Union, they have Mud March, which probably won't be useful, but it could be, you never know. Dysentery, for a 1-point card, maybe useful, maybe better just to activate Grant. Honestly, you're going to get rid of more than one strength point activating Grant. Emergency call for volunteers, which they're certainly not hurting for strength points, but you never know. Quantrill's Raiders, doubt it'll get used. Bermuda Blockade Surge, 2-pointer. Ironclad Building Program, that's really nice. That'll get the amphibious assault modifier up to 4. So they're definitely going to play that before assaulting St. Philip's Jackson. And then a Horace Greeley editorial, which isn't particularly useful. So the one thing I should note, the only thing out of the ordinary to start off here is that the Union decided to send Reynolds down with an expedition to Fort Pickens, and the idea here is to at least take Pensacola, but maybe to advance through Pollard and then Mobile to cut off that blockade port and further advance towards ending the blockade running in the East Gulf blockade zone, because the West Gulf blockade zone should be closed by the end of the turn. So if they can get both of those done, that would be great. But going around this way allows them to not have to do any amphibious assaults, which actually isn't that bad now that the modifiers are so high. So they can always still do that as a base from Fort Pickens, and they could always use Reynolds to get to Fort St. Philip Jackson. It just gives them options in the area, and it's another threat to the Union, to the Confederacy. It just gives them something else to think about. So let's go ahead and hop in. All right, so the two sides have exchanged some cards back and forth, and the Union and the Confederates placed Arkansas, the CSS Arkansas, into New Orleans. So the attack on Fort St. Philip Jackson can go on now, and the maximum you can get for a modifier on these is a +3. So it's going to be a +4 for the amphibious assault, -2 for the fort. So it's going to put them at a +2 modifier, +1 for Reynolds. So it's a combined of 3, and then 3 to 1 odds gives them a +2. So it's going to be a +5 total for this attack, which should be enough to secure a victory, but we'll see. So, of course, the absolute worst thing had to happen. 6-1. And so it'll be plus the 5. It'll be a 6 and a 6, which is 1-1 again. So literally, if they would have rolled anything besides a 1, they would have won. But the 1 was the only thing that resulted in that, but that's how it happens. So that 1 is gone. This is going to be reduced back down to a 2. And then they're going to have to retreat again because there was a fort. So they'll go back to Fort Pickens. And they'll try again. The problem with the Union hand is that it's very low in numbers 1, 3, 1, 1. They've already used a 2 and a 1, so, or actually a couple of 2s and a 1. So very low numbers, and they wanted to save that volunteer card and actually use it. But they're not going to get to, and this is going to be a slow turn for them because of the low count on the cards. But they're going to take that. They're going to play the 3 and get in there regardless. They're not going to mess around with this anymore because it's getting pointless having to keep waiting. So they're not going to risk letting them reinforce it again. Some exchanges have gone back and forth. A couple of cards played. The Union did successfully take Nashville. Grant marched north and took the city. Could have had some more going on in Tennessee, but they decided to wait on that. And the action now, with the final Union card, is going on in Missouri. So it's Hooker in the Army of the Missouri against Van Dorn, who sits with a relatively small force, 1 or 2 strength points, 3, never mind. And so that'll should give them a bonus. Maybe it just won't quite. If they had 12, then they could. So that's what they'll go 1, 2, pick up these 2 strength points. 3, 4. So that'll give the Army of the Missouri now 13 against 3, which will give them that 3-1 modifier. So it's going to be a +1 for the Army of the Missouri, +2 for the force ratio modifier, which is going to be a +3 total, and then nothing for Van Dorn. And it's going to be a large battle. Or no, not quite a large battle, a medium battle. 16 strength points. So a 5 and a 3 are the results. And the 3 is going to be modified to a 6. The 5 is going to remain. So on the table, a 6 is a 2, and a 5 is a 1. So that will be a Union victory. This goes down by 2 to 1. And they will their strength reduced from 13 to 12. And Van Dorn will be forced to retreat, and he'll retreat into New Madrid, taking the strength points of that fortification up to 2. While Hooker will still be able to advance because he had more than double the strength. So he'll leave a... and honestly, because the force modifier wasn't that bad, so never mind. They're going to leave a strength point behind, reducing them down to 11. And then they will keep moving further south and attack New Madrid. And if they can successfully take New Madrid, I do believe they capture Missouri as well. Not to put any more pressure on this. So it's going to be a +2 for the fort. That's it for the Union. And then for the Confederates, the Union has 11 strength points to the defenders 2. So that is 5 to 1, which will give them a +4, +1 for Hooker. So no doubt this is going to be interesting. 4-1, and it's a medium battle. 4-1. So that 1 is going to be modified by +5 to a 6. So we're going to have the same result as last time, a 2 for the Confederates to lose and a 1 for the Union to lose. So the Army of the Missouri goes down by 1 to 10, and then the Confederates will lose both of their strength points. And the Tennessee ironclad goes away as well. Van Dorn back to the board, back to the track for next turn. The fort is destroyed, which reduces strategic will for the Confederates by 1 and improves for the Union 1. But the Fortunes of War switch will actually make it 3, a plus 3 total. And now Missouri will go back to the Union. That fort is cleared, which means now amphibious assaults could be made against Memphis, but I don't see that being an option because so many troops are stationed there. But anyways, that'll be 10 more points coming off the Confederates, and the momentum's starting to swing at just the right time. The Confederates have one more card. It's a 1 detached cavalry, and I don't know how much they can really do with that. They'll just move a troop from Fayetteville, Arkansas, 1, 2, into Little Rock in preparation for an attack on Arkansas. So that will do it for the card play. We now can go and place political control markers. We'll need 2 of them. One in Greenville, Missouri. One in New Madrid. And let me look around to make sure there aren't any others. I don't believe that there are. Yes, one will go down in Fort St. Philip Jackson. Forgot about that. Which means that the Confederates will lose a strategic will, because they cannot get a blockade runner into the West Gulf blockade zone. So those strategic will losses are starting to pile up. So with all of those placed, we now can do control states, which this border state will now flip, and that's 10 to the Confederates, or to the Union, sorry. Let me make sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, yes. So that's going to be 10 more points lost. And they're now at 61 to the Union's 84. So that's drastically dropping. Next turn, I really see Tennessee falling, as long as they can knock out Jackson and Memphis. Arkansas could also go next turn. That could be a combined 20 strategic will if Memphis does fall. So another 20 off that would knock them down to 41, which at that point things are really looking bad. But the Confederates might. That's the thing, is you just have to hold on. You don't necessarily have to, hold your original borders. You just gotta keep the tide at bay at least. But it does not look good at the moment, because there's a lot of stuff raining down on them from just about every direction. And it's going to be, the Union have managed to work their way around the Confederate defenses that they've set up, but I think now they're going to have to face them. They're going to have to face them in Memphis for sure, but they can only continue to prod around the edges for so long until they're forced to actually do something and make a direct attack, which is going to come against Memphis next turn. It's just a matter of who's going to make it and how successful it's going to be. But grinding away is not a thing that the Confederates want, because eventually they're going to run out of strength points. They have a lot banked up in their coastal areas, but they're starting to dwindle. I've noticed that they've had to take away points recently to reinforce some weak areas, which is a success to the Union, forcing them to, move around troops to places they don't necessarily want them. So things looking better for the Union, still not in the bag, and eyes towards that election in 1864. They need to have things tied down by then. Otherwise, the game's over a turn early. So on to the fall of 1863. All right, the fall 1863 turn, final turn of the 1863 year. Just got done with the reinforcements, and the Confederates had to lose 4 strategic will for a failed blockade roll. and then, of course, failing to get the blockade in the West Gulf blockade zone because of the capturing of the ports there. So let's go ahead and get you the hands. First, the Confederates have Western Virginia, which is useless. There's a 2 card. The Anaconda Plan, can't use, but it's a 3. Big Bethel, meh. It's a 1 card, though, so we can activate a couple people. Chickamauga, interesting, and it might be useful because there are some strength points lying around. They could perhaps get together and then do a big attack with. Even thought about doing it with the Army of Northern Virginia, maybe repelling McClellan and the Army of the Potomac from the Shenandoah Valley, and kind of putting the Union back on their heels in Virginia. But it's risky because Meade is very capable, and he's sitting in Washington, D.C., could very easily come down and take Richmond if they expose it. So I'm not sure how that one will get used. Union Army production delayed, or arms production. Once again, kind of an It's a 3 card. Not sure how much getting rid of 2 strength points does, but we'll see. An ambush, which is good because the Union is already limited to very few cavalry leaders, so that's nice. And then Belmont, which is the same as Big Bethel, just with a different name. So, an average hand at best. A couple of high cards, which is good, but, nothing spectacular out of the ordinary. For the Union, pro-Union secessionist in Tennessee, which is nice because they could drop PC markers on either side of Forrest, which would force him to move out of the way for a turn, force them to activate him. Quaker guns, which can't be used. A minor campaign. I've not seen a campaign card in a while, but this is good for probably an action in Tennessee, combining the Army of the Cumberland and Army of the Tennessee. Ship Island and Key West, which allows the blockade to go up by 1. Another good one. Wish we'd have gotten it earlier. Franz Siegel, The Bread Riots, which is a 2-pointer on the strategic will. Once again, an Confederate Scientist, a 2 card. So, it's a little low for my liking as far as the spread goes. 2 3 cards, but they're both going to be played for the event. At least this one activates 2, and then otherwise, a couple of 2s and then a lot of 1s. So, not a great hand. And at this point in the game, it may come down to if the Union gets enough cards to do enough to win the war between now and the end, which is approaching very quickly. So we'll see, but we're going to start off with the Union, who have Tennessee on their mind. So after giving a lot of thought, decided to go with this instead of what I was going to do. So the first turn, the Union just marched down to Pittsburgh Landing, capturing a couple of places. And rather than use this minor campaign card to move 2, they're going to use it for a special army-sized naval move. I'll double-check the rules on this to make sure that this is legal. There's not like a cap on the amount of troops you can move, because it's a 13-strength army, so maybe there is, but I'll look that up. But the Army of the Cumberland is going to come around through here and hit Memphis. Now, my original plan was to blockade Memphis, to have the Army of the Missouri come over, cut off Little Rock, have the Army of the Cumberland come around and cut off from Jackson. And that way they would not be able to find their other resource point, so then they would have to surrender because of attrition. But that's kind of, pushing things off until as late as possible, and a lot of things could go wrong. They can just send out a cavalry general, then you're going to be surrounding the city, and just, in the end, this is one fell swoop could do it. And my thinking behind this is the best way to get modifiers, because the amphibious assault is a +4, and the Army of the Cumberland gives you a +3, so all in all, you're going to end up with a +7, which as long as the Union rolls a 3, there's no way they can lose, because they'll go maximum to a 10, they'll have the 3 with the asterisk, which means it doesn't matter what the Confederates roll, they win. So that's what they're going for. it's the best odds of any attack that they could have. And both sides are likely to lose a general if the rolls go well, you know. So that's not bad for the Union because there's not really a great leader just besides Pleasanton, who's a good cavalry general. So all in all, this is the best way to dislodge the Confederates from Memphis. Bold attack, but I think if they take Memphis, they don't need to take any other spaces. They already have the 13 they need to capture the state. So Memphis is the only thing holding out for them. So big attack, but should be worth it. Let me double check the rules just to make sure there's not any special cases for the naval move. So yes, it can only be with 9 strength points, and it can only be led by Grant or Sherman. So the last action I did, rather than moving the Army of the Cumberland here, I decided just to switch it up and move them to Grand Jet instead. Then instead of taking this action, I decided to move Pleasanton from the Army of the Cumberland to the Army of the Tennessee. And now we're doing the minor campaign with Grant in Tennessee. So I just switched the actions around to make it work. And the Confederates moved some forces around on their own. So Grant's going to leave Nashville with 9 strength points. So he's going to leave behind 4. And come around to Memphis. And we'll get a zoom in here. It's actually good that they left some behind because I was worried about the Army of Tennessee coming in and taking Nashville back. Not that that would have really been a good idea, but just a concern. So it's going to be the Army of the Tennessee against the Army of Mississippi. So total strength is going to be a large battle. So there are some strategic will points at stake. And the bonuses for the Confederates are going to be 3, 4. They're not going to use 2 generals because they don't need that many. Probably. 3, 4, 5, 6. They'd rather, if numbers go high, they're going to lose. So they'd rather not lose a general. So they're only going to use 1 subordinate. They could use 1 or 2 subordinates. They're going to use 1. So it's 3, 4, 5, 6. And the Union has 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They'll use 1 subordinate as well. Yeah. So they're going to use 1 subordinate. They're going to use 1 subordinate. It's 6 and 8. So the Confederates kind of see this not going well for them. Big numbers. 6 and a 3. So that doesn't really have much of an effect. And we'll scroll over here to the table to give you a look at it. So a 3 is modified well beyond a 6 because it's plus 8. So they're at 10. And this is modified beyond 10 as well. So, you know, that was kind of always going to happen. Sorry, they're actually here. Ah, I see, in a large battle. It's actually not the case that they win. I was looking at the medium battle, but it's actually a large battle. So, in this case, actually, the Union will win. The Confederates will win, excuse me. And it's going to be a big time loss. So the Union's going to lose 6. So they're down from 9 to 3. And the Confederates, are going to lose 5 from 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, down to 7. So that's a big loss. And we're going to go down to large battle. The winner gains 3. Which will be 5, because the tides of the fortunes of war, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, puts them on 62, and they're going to lose 5, which actually becomes 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, which put them on 76. So a big loss. Like I said, I was looking at the medium table, saying that it could only be a draw when the things are maxed out. But on this table, that's not the case. So they're both going to roll. On 1 to 3, they lose a general. I believe it's 1 to 3. Anyways, they both rolled 2, so let's find out. It's either 1 to 3 or 4 to 6. Yeah, on a 1 to 3. And it can't be the head general, it has to be a subordinate. So they're both going to take their subordinate generals. We'll pan back over here. Give this a shake. And the general the Confederates lose will be Smith. So Smith's gone to keep their cavalry general. Smith was actually a good general, though. And then the Union has a 50-50 shot of losing their cavalry general. And they will, in fact, do so. Pleasanton is gone. I think that they might have replacements. I don't know. Let me check it for that, because if so, that's actually very useful. Yep, so Kilpatrick replaces Pleasanton. So they get Kilpatrick, who isn't as good, but is what it is. So now Grant will have to go back to Memphis, picking those 4 strength points back up, putting his total strength up to 7. And the Army of the Mississippi holds on. Now, for how long is the question, because they're down to 7 strength points now, and the Union might have one more attack left in them, because Grant can always sweep around and hit them again, not by naval movement, but see, now I wonder if I had just done a small, like 3, I guess the odds would have been pretty bad. 3 against 12. Yep, so now 3 against 7 would not be. So right now I could do a naval move with, let's just say, who's a good general on this side? Halleck or somebody. With 3, that would be a medium battle. Then you're going to get plus 5 to the roll. Anyways, there's a pretty solid chance, actually, that things go well if you do the attack like that, using the 3 operation point activation, moving somebody like that. Which kind of seems, like how could a small force like that manage to dislodge a fortified position? But if you stick on that medium table and get a maximum roll, you can't lose. With the modifier for the amphibious assault being so high, it's really not hard to do, especially if you could take Grant with 3. Now, of course, he's already in command of an army, so he's not eligible. But somebody with some decent modifiers like Sherman, who's coming out next turn, could pretty easily do it. So our strategy on what to do with Memphis will change here in the next few turns, but we'll see if we can take it by the end. So the Confederates are going to try and double up on that success at Memphis by attacking Nashville, because it's kind of weak. So they're going to activate Johnston. He's going to go into Nashville. I debated this a lot, but I decided it's the best course of action, or a good course of action. Who knows if it's best. So it's going to be a large battle. 13 strength points for the Army of Tennessee, 7 for the Army of the Tennessee. The bonuses for Grant and his army will be 5, and the bonuses for Johnston and his army will be 5. So 5 for each side. Obviously, if the rolls go high, it benefits the defender, but we get the roll, and it's 2 5s. So the rolls are high. And we're going to have a similar situation to what we just saw, except in reverse. So the 2 5s mean they're both modified up here. So it's going to be 6 lost for the Confederates. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, moving them down to 7, and 5 for the Army of the Tennessee. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way down to 2 strength points. and that means that there's also going to be leader losses potentially, so we'll roll for that. And they actually both roll high, so there's no leader loss. So this is another large battle, and we're basically going to go back to what we just had, because a large battle was lost. So it means the loser gains 3, which will be 5 for the Union. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So they're up to 81. The Confederates will lose 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They're back down to 54. So we're back where we started pretty much. But they wanted to do this because, first of all, now you're saying you have 7 strength points and Grant has 2. So it's pretty big bonuses they can get. It's going to cause a little bit of havoc here in the East, because in the West, sorry, because there's now a crisis of Grant being in need of some strength points, and they're going to have to put everything else on hold. So I kind of thought there was a good chance that they might lose, but the benefits that they won, pushing out Grant, taking back Nashville, winning a large battle, I mean, you could have gotten quite a few strategic will points, balanced things out, and maybe changed the tide here. Even with the loss, it's not all that bad. So, a risk taken and a risk not necessarily punished. So Grant retreated across the Cumberland River, where he's safe in Clarksville. The Army of Tennessee doesn't really want to take Nashville because you're going to gain 5 strategic will just to lose it, so that's no point. It doesn't make sense. So we're going to instead come over here and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to recapture those spaces, and then attack Pope with the 6th. It's going to be 7 against 2, so a medium battle. The rolls are not good. It's going to be a straight up 5 for the Union, and that 1 is modified by 5 to a 6 for the Confederates. So a 6 is a 2, a 5 is a 1, so the Confederates are victorious. Pope is eliminated. I'll go on the track for next turn, and they'll sit in Clinton. So, moderately successful, and they were twice as large, so they could have moved if they had more, but this opens up a gateway into Kentucky, possibly another strike at Grant from behind. So the end of the turn has come. The Union took Fort Morgan down in the Gulf, and then the Confederates retreated to Toloma, repositioned, brought Forrest around, and eliminated some more of those control markers. So now the Union only has 6 of the 13 they need to take Tennessee. So steps were taken backwards in the state of Tennessee rather than forwards, but perhaps some inroads were made in Mississippi or in Memphis. We'll see. But that wraps up 1863. On to the next turn.